Do you want to say no to your husband in regards to sex, but you're not sure? Is that wrong? Well, I want to tell you, you're not alone in this place. Actually, that is a part of my story, and I lived there so long. Yeah. In my first marriage, so much of the time I just felt like a body, that I wasn't even special. And it just tore me up. I had to live like two lives, who I was with him and who I was in the rest of my world. And that was not good and that was not easy. And I don't wish it on anybody else. So I want to give you some encouragement today. We are going to unpack, yes, your feelings do matter. And what does emotional safety have to do with intimacy? Also, what does Scripture really say? Not how have things been twisted and hung over you. And then, what is your path forward? Because that's where we want to go, not staying stuck. So, the question of the day is it wrong to say no to my husband when I'm feeling pressured about sex with no connection? So, first of all, yes, your feelings really matter, and that internal conflict is a real thing. And I'm glad you've noticed it, because once again, that is going to help you to make changes and to go forward. You may be torn between thinking about submission and then self-abandonment. And what I mean by that is that you're having to say no to yourself again and again. You're like abandoning standing up for yourself. And that can get twisted really fast and work against you. And you may be thinking, well, I love my husband and I want a godly marriage, but I feel invisible and I feel like I'm not heard. And we don't want that to be what you get used to. So I want you to say aloud right now, I am not broken. I am not rebellious for wanting emotional connection. These are good things. These are things from God. That's why we are pressing through, even though it's a little bit difficult. All right, second thing I need you to think about. What does emotional safety have to do with intimacy? A lot. When you have emotional safety, that means you feel comfortable. I used to say, comfortable in my own skin. And you can be vulnerable. You can open up because there's trust, there's respect, there is this effort you can see, and mutual love. You feel loved, not just love by words only, but love by actions and love by what you internalize. And that is where we are heading. That is what I want you to hold on to. Without that emotional safety, you shut down. And you can begin to associate sex with anxiety, and it can lead to resentment. It's quite possible you are already on the road to resentment, and maybe you've been shaming yourself for being in that place. But we're going to turn it all around. We're going to bring these things to light and get some hope and some new direction for you. What is the third thing we want to open up? And this is, what does Scripture really say? So the verse that comes up often that people can manipulate is from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. And this is the one where it talks about husbands and wives to not keep sex from their spouse, to not forbid that. And while there's truth to that, what the main goal of that passage is that it is a mutual giving one to another. That's the whole goal, is to find the way to do that best and easiest and most authentic for you. So we just blew that myth out of the water, right? So another passage that comes up is from Ephesians 5, and usually they start with verse 22, wives, submit to your husbands. Well, there is an element of truth there, But we go back to verse 21 where it says we are to mutually submit one to another. Wow, that is the foundation that God is calling us to. And another passage which you may have heard, this is Hebrews 13:4, and it says that the marriage bed is undefiled, but it says it is a place of honor. And what that means is that there's purity and there's sacredness and there's love and respect. So all of the activities that have to do with sex, with the marriage bed, need to be based on love and respect. And that does not include twisting scriptures for manipulation. And number 4, we're going to talk about what is your path going forward. So first thing I have to bring up is that you may need to understand what's going on with your husband. I don't know if you've talked to him about this. Sometimes husbands interpret the no to sex as a personal no, like rejection. And then it's really difficult to hear anything besides that. I know what you're really saying no to is the disconnection, but it requires a lot of articulating to make sure that it's not being said with fear, with anger, so that the clear message is communicated. Also, your husband, you may be like, why doesn't he hear me? I'm saying this all the time. So just be aware that this could be your opportunity to get on the same page if you've never had these talks before. What I also want you to keep in mind is that he may feel like sex is his best or only way to feel close. So it is time for a learning curve to open up what the options are, how many different ways there can be feeling close and having that emotional oneness. So I do need you to have honest conversation with your husband. Might feel a little scary, might feel a little intimidating, but we're going to give you some very practical steps so you can clearly say, I'm not saying no to you, I'm saying no to disconnection. And he may need to have you explain that. So here's something else you can say. I want to feel close to you, but I need to feel emotionally connected to feel safe in my body. Now that one might be a newsflash. What do you mean you don't feel safe in your body? And you have to remember that men and women get to a place of arousal so differently. And men are gifted to be able to compartmentalize, and it does serve them well in many areas, but women are not compartmentalizing. So they have more things to process before they can give their body. Literally, they need to have a mental yes before they can have an emotional yes, and then a physical yes. And so that might be a learning curve that your husband's going through. You can also say, let's find ways to reconnect emotionally and make that a pattern in our marriage. He may not understand what you mean, but I'm not leaving you alone with that. Listen, if you have lots more questions, my website, limitlessintimacy.com, has so many free resources for you. I've got webinars, I've got free ebooks, I have just blog posts, things that you can spend some more time with. I do have books available, and I offer relationship coaching so we can do this together. You don't have to face this alone. I hope that encourages you, and I want to leave you with these final reminders. Here we go. You are not failing God by voicing what's in your heart. And it's healthy and godly to want emotional connection in your marriage. And emotional and sexual intimacy, they go hand in hand according to God's original design for sexual intimacy in marriage. Thanks so much for joining me today. Remember, God's design for a thriving marriage is an intimate connection in spirit, soul, and body.